Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create this scope aiming system and how to apply breath movement and recoil movement to your scope. But before we start, please like this video and subscribe my channel for more Unreal Engine tutorials. Thank you. Alright, first I'm going to create a widget for my scope, and I'm going to use this scope PNG image for my scope widget. So here I right click, and from user interface section I create a new widget blueprint and I name it scope dash widget. Alright, now I open it up and here I search for canvas panel and drag and drop it here. Now I search for image and I add this image here and I name it a scope. Alright, now I anchor it to the center and set position X and Y to 0, and I also set alignment to 0.5. Now in this section I search for my scope image. Now I size it up and set size X to 1700 and also Y to 1700, just like this. Now I add another image and place it below my scope image and I name it render. And again I anchor it to the center. I set position to 0 and alignment to 0.5. And here in this section, this draw as section, I set it to rounded box, and now I scale it up to cover my whole scope length, just like this, because I want to create bevel for my widget and I don't want this lens part, this scope part actually to be affected by this bevel. Now finally here I search for background blur and I place it below this render image. Now I size it up like this to cover my to cover all of my viewport, and here I anchor it to the center and I set blur strength to 15, just like this. And here I set Z order of this background blur to 0, and for this render image I set Z order to 1, okay, and I set scope Z order to 2. Alright, now I compile and minimize this widget, and here I right click and here I search for render target and I name it scope render. Now I open it up and I set size X to 1024 and also size Y to 1024. Now I save and minimize it, and here I right click and create a new material and I name it scope dash matte. Now I open it up and here I set material domain to user interface and blend mode to translucent. Now I hold T button and left click to add a texture. Here I connect RGB to final color, and here in this section, texture section, I search for my render target, my scope render, the render target that I just created, and I assign it to this texture. Alright, now I hit this save, and I go back to my widget and I assign this material to my render image that I placed inside my widget. Here I search for I search for scope matte. Alright, and now I compile, and now I open my character blueprint, which in this case it is BP underscore third person character. And here in component section I hit this add icon and add a new scene capture component 2D. Now I drag and drop it to my follow camera to make it child of this flow camera. Okay, and now in this section scene capture I assign my scope render target. Now I compile and go back to my widget, and here again I compile and again I go back to my character blueprint, and in this section in event begin play, here I drag a node and search for create widget, and here I search for my scope widget, and now I promote it to a variable and I name it scope widget ref, which is actually a reference to my scope widget. Now I compile, and here to just for testing this widget I drag a node from this scope widget reference and search for add to viewport. Alright, now I compile and run the game, and as you can see I have this blur in all of my widget except this scope lens, and this part of my widget is not affected by this blur. Okay, now I go back to my character blueprint, and here I find some free space, and here I right click and I search for rightmost button input. Okay, now I drag a node from here and add a do once node, and from here I drag a node and add a flip flop node. Now I create a new variable in type of boolean and I name it scoping. Now I drag and get a setter of this boolean, and here in A part I set it to true, and for B part I set it to false. Now I drag and drop my character movement component here, and now I drag a node from this character movement component and search for orient rotation to movement. Set orient rotation to movement, and I set it to false, and again I drag a node from this character movement component and search for set use controller desired rotation, and I set it to true. And now I copy and paste these two nodes here, and for B part of this flip flop node I set this one to true and this one to false. Now in this section I create first I select this camera boom, and now I create a duplicate by hitting Ctrl and D, and I name it a scope aim, and here I set target arm length to 0, and all of these socket offset and target offset to 0. Okay, now I drag and drop my flow camera component here, and here I drag a node and search for attach component, attach component to component. And I connect this scope aim arm spring arm to parent, just like this. And I also set location, rotation, and scale rule to keep word. And here I drag a node and search for move component to. And I connect my flow camera to here. And for B part, I get a copy of this node, and here I connect my flow camera to the target and camera boom to parent, my default camera boom, not the duplicate that I created. I connect this one to here, and again I get a copy of this move component to node and place it here. And for this one I connect this follow camera component to here in this component section. And here I prefer to set this overtime input to 0, because I want this change to be instant, not in a time. And with the animation I prefer it to be a snapping like, not with animation. But if you want, you can add some input to this overtime input. Alright, now here I drag and drop my character mesh, and here I drag a node and search for set visibility, and here I set this new visibility to false. And now I drag and drop my scope widget reference, and I drag a node and search for add to viewport and connect it to here. And here I drag a node and I add a reroute node for now, but later I'm going to add another function here. And for this B part of flip-flop node, I add this set visibility of mesh, so I get a copy of these two nodes, and here I set this new visibility to true. And here after that I get my scope widget reference. Now I drag a node and search for remove from parent. And I get my flow camera component, which is actually this one. I drag and drop it here. I drag a node and search for set field of view, and I set it to 90, which is the default value of this. Here if I select this one, select this follow camera component, as you can see default value of my field of view is 90. Alright, and now I'm going to create another variable in type of float, and I name it aim sensitivity. Aim sense, for example. And here I compile and set default value of this aim sense to 1, and I drag and drop and get a setter of this variable, and here I set it to 1. Alright, now here I drag a node and add a delay node. I set duration of this delay to 0.2, and I also connect this reroute node to here, and I connect this completed execution pin to the reset of this do once node. Okay, now I compile and run the game. Before that, I think I should remove this add to viewport from here. Okay, now if I press right mouse button, as you can see I have this scope widget, and if I now press it again, I go back to normal mode. And now I am going to create zoom in and zoom out functionality. Okay, now I go back to my character blueprint, and here I find some free space, and here I first right click and search for mouse wheel up, and also mouse wheel down for zooming up and zooming out. And from here I drag a node and add a branch node, and here I connect this scoping boolean to condition of this branch. Now I create another variable in type of integer, and I name it zoom level. In this tutorial I'm going to show you two type of sniper zooming. First method is leveled zooming, which means that you zoom in and zoom out in, for example, 3 levels, and another method is gradual zooming, that you can zoom in and zoom out gradually. Alright, now from true part of this branch node I drag a node and add another branch node, and now I get my zoom level, and I compile here and I set default value of this integer to 1, and here I drag a node and add, and I search for greater equal node, and here I set it to 3, and I connect it to this branch node. And from false part of this branch node I drag a node and add a do once node. Okay, now from here this integer I drag a node and add this increment integer node, and I connect it to here, and from here I drag a node and search for switch on int, and I connect this execution pin to here. Alright, now I add some more pins, number 0, 1, 2 and 3. Now I drag and drop my flow camera component, and here I drag a node and search for set field of view, and I connect this one to 2 execution pin, and here I set it to 50, and again I get a copy of these 2 nodes here and connect this to number 3, and here I set field of view to 20. And now I get the setter of my aim sense and connect it here, and here for number 2 I set it to 0.4, and again I get a copy of this setter, and here I set it to 0.2. Now I get my scene capture component 2D, and place it here, and here I drag a node and search for set field of view, and here I set it to 50, and again I get a copy of this node, connect it to here, and here I set it to 20, and now I connect this execution pin to reset of this do once node, just like this. Alright, and now for zooming out for mouse wheel down input, again I drag a node from here and add a branch node and connect this scoping boolean to the condition, and here again from true part of this branch I add another branch node, and now I get my zoom level integer, and here I drag a node and add a less equal node, and I insert 1 here, and I connect it to condition of this branch node, and from false part of second branch node again I add a do once node, and from here I drag a node and add a decrement int node and connect it to here, and from here I drag a node and search for switch on int, and now I add some more pins, number 1, 2 and 3. Now I get my flow camera component here, and here I drag a node and search for set field of view. I connect it to number 1, and here I set it to 90. Again I get 2 copies of this node. I connect this one to number 2 and number 3 and connect target to this flow camera component, and for number 2 I set it to 50, and for number 3 I set it to 20, and here I get a setup of my aim sense and connect it here. For number 1 I set this aim sensitivity to 1. For this one I set it to 0.4, and for this one I set it to 0.2. and finally I get my scene capture component, and here I set field of view to 90. You get 2 copies of this node, connect them to here. This one should be 90, this one 50, and this one 20. And now I connect all of them to reset of this do once node. And now I go to this section, camera input, and here I disconnect this node, and here I add a multiply node, and I connect my aim sense float to here, and I also do the same for this one. The multiply node and connect aim sense float here. Alright, now I compile and run the game. Here, I'm sorry, I think I have made a mistake here. Okay, I should connect this one to here. Alright, now again I run the game. Now press right mouse button and this scope will be visible now, and as you can see here I can zoom in and zoom out. Alright, and this aim sensitivity is okay and flawless. Alright, now I go back to my camera, to my character blueprint, and now I'm going to show you how to create gradual zooming. So here first I get a copy of these 2 inputs and place them right here, and for now I disconnect this level zooming, and here for mouse wheel up, here I drag a node and add a branch node, and I connect this scoping boolean to here, and from true part of this branch again I add another branch node, and now I get my flow camera. Here I drag a node and search for get field of view. Alright, and now I drag a node from here and add this less equal node, and here I insert 10, and now I connect it to condition of this branch node, and from false part, from here I drag a node and search for set field of view, and I connect it to the false part of this branch node. And here from this field of view variable I drag a node and add a subtract node, and here I insert for example 5, and now I connect it to here. And for zooming out again I add a branch node, connect a scoping boolean to here. Now I get my flow camera, and here I drag a node and search for get field of view, and here I drag a node and search for greater equal node, and here I set it, I insert 90, and from here I add a branch node and I connect it to the true part of previous branch node. Okay, and now from here I drag a node and search for set field of view, and here I get a copy of this node and place it here. I connect this one to the true part, and for true part here I set it to 90, and for the false part here I connect this one to here, and from this field of view I drag a node and add this add node, and here I insert number 5 and I connect it to here. Alright, now I compile and run the game, and now as you can see, I'm sorry, I think I have made a mistake. Here I get my scene capture component, and here I search for set field of view, and I connect this one to here, and I get a copy of these two nodes. Here I insert 90, and here again I get a copy of this node and connect it to here. Alright, now I compile and run the game. Alright, as you can see here, I can zoom in and zoom out gradually. Okay, but now I go back to my character blueprint and disconnect these nodes, and here I reactivate leveled zooming again. Now I'm going to show you how to create breathing effect for a scope widget. So here I open up my scope widget, and inside graph section here I right click and create a new custom event, and I name it breath effect. Now from here I add a branch node, and here I create a new variable in type of boolean, and I name it hold breath, and I connect this to here. And now I get my scope image variable, and here I drag a node and search for set render translation. I right click here and click on split extract pin, and now I right click here and promote this translation y to a variable, because I'm going to create a breathing effect that makes an up and down movement. Alright, now I name this variable, I rename it to up down movement. up down move. Now I disconnect this one, and here I get a setter of this variable and connect this to the false part, and I also connect this one to here. And now I have this variable here, and I drag a node and add this add node, and here I promote this input to a variable and I name it minus plus. Now I compile and set default value of this variable to 0.2, and I connect it to here. Now from here I drag a node and add a delay node, and I set the duration to 0.0001. And here I drag a node and add a branch node, and from here I drag a node and search for this greater equal node, and here I check this variable is greater or equal to 15, and I connect this to here. And from false part of this branch node, again I add another branch node here. And from true part, here I add another delay node, and I set for duration, here I right click and search for random float in range. I set minimum to 0.05 and maximum to 0.25 and connect it to the duration. And here I get a setter of this minus plus variable and set it to minus 0.2. And after that, again I add another branch node and connect this hold breath boolean to the condition. And now I connect the false part to this node right here. And now for this branch, again I drag a node from here and search for less equal node, and now I'm going to check that it is lesser or equal to minus 6. Alright, and now I connect false part of this branch node to this node here, and for true part, again I add another delay node and I get a copy of this random float in range node and connect it to the duration. And now I again copy setter of this minus plus variable, and this time I set it to 0.2. And finally here I add another branch node. I connect hold breath boolean to the condition, and I connect false part of this branch node to here. Now I open up my character blueprint, and in this section, I'm sorry, here rightmost button input, exactly where I created this reroute node. Now I remove it. Now I get my scope widget reference variable, and here I search for breath effect event. I connect this one to here and this one to here. but now I go back to my widget, and here I have made a little mistake and this execution pin is not connected. Now I fix it. Okay, now I compile and run the game, and as you can see, if I aim with this scope, I have this breathing effect that makes an up and down movement to my scope. Alright, now I'm going to create a functionality to make my character hold breath and prevent this movement. So now I open my character blueprint, and now from edit tab I open project settings, and here from input section I create a new action mapping input and I name it hold breath. And for key binding I select left shift button. Now I go back to my character blueprint, and here I find some free space and right click and search for hold breath input. And now I drag and drop my scope widget reference here, and from here I drag a node and search for set hold breath. Set hold breath, and I get a copy of this node here and connect it to here. And for pressed I set it to true, and for release I set it to false. And now again I drag a node from this scope widget reference and search for breath effect event, and I connect it here. Alright, now I compile and run the game, and here as you can see I have breathing effect, and now if I hold shift button this effect will be disabled, and now if I release shift button, as you can see here again I have this breathing effect on my scope. Now for the final part of this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a sudden movement for a scope when a character is shooting. So here inside my character blueprint in event graph, here I right click and search for left mouse button, and from here I drag a node and add a branch node, and I connect this scoping boolean to the condition. And for true part I drag a node and add a do once node. Alright, and now here I right click and search for timeline, add timeline, and I connect this to play from start. Now I open up this timeline, I set duration to 0.2, and here I hit this icon and add the flow track. Here I right click and add a new key, I set time to 0 and value to 0. Alright, now I right click again and I add another key, and here I set time to 0.2 and value to 1. Alright, now I compile and I go back to event graph. Now I drag and drop my flow camera component, and here I drag a node and search for relative rotation. Get relative rotation. and here I right click and click on split extract pin. And again from this flow camera component I drag a node and search for set relative rotation. And again here I right click and click on split extract pin. Now I connect X to X and Z to Z. And now here I right click and search for a lerp node, this one exactly, and I connect this one to A, and I connect this new track to the alpha, and here I connect this return value to Y, and in this case I'm just going to create this movement for y-axis, and I'm not going to touch X and Z rotation. But if you want to make some movement in, for example, Z direction, Z axis, you can repeat the same process for this one. Now I connect this update execution pin to here, and again from here I drag a node and add this add node. Now here I right click and search for random float in range. Alright, now I connect this one to here. I set minimum to 3 and maximum to 4, and I connect this one to B. Now here I get a copy of this timeline and paste it here, and I connect this finished execution to this play from a start of this one. And again here I right click and add a lerp node. Now I connect this new track to here, and here again I from this flow camera I drag a node and search for set relative rotation. And here I right click and click on split extract pin, and here again I connect X to X and Z to Z. And now here I connect the rotation Y to A input, and from here again from this relative rotation Y again I drag a node and add this subtract node. And again here I get a copy of this random float in range and paste it here and connect it to this one, and here I connect it to this B input of lerp node. Alright, now I connect this return value to new rotation Y of this set relative rotation function, and I also connect this update execution pin to here, and for finished section, this one, here again I drag a node from this flow camera component and I search for set relative rotation, and here I right click and split extract pin, and I set all of them to 0, and I connect this one to finished, and here I connect this one to reset of this do once node. Alright, now I compile and run the game. As you can see here, I can start aiming with this scope, and I can zoom in and zoom out. And if I press left mouse button, as you can see, I have this movement here, just like that. But you can also play with these inputs and values to have more realistic gunshot recoil movement, and also you can create some rotation for other rotation axis like Z rotation with this method. Okay, if this episode and this tutorial was useful for you, please like this video and subscribe my channel for more Unreal Engine tutorials. Thank you.